So as David mentioned, Ground Zero has been the scene of celebrations ever since news broke of bin Laden's death. In fact, the whole country was the scene of unbridled euphoria for a man shot dead and dropped into the sea.
The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
The news spread faster than the bullet put through bin Laden's head. Ding dong, Osama's dead. Spontaneous celebrations erupted across America. University campus dorms unloaded into the streets.
Osama's dead.
That's true. So, America!
Students who would have been wide-eyed children when the towers went down
USA!
flocked to the White House, celebrating a sense that justice had been served.
It felt like there was a void, that there was justice that hadn't been served for such a long period of time.
Crowds gathered at Ground Zero, bursting with pride and jubilation.
I just feel so liberated, so good, about this. This is such a great accomplishment for the country. I just feel so good about this.
For some New York locals, the satisfaction was more somber.
I'm glad the bastard's dead. I'm thrilled to death. I'm glad the bastard is dead.
Stadiums, fields, and hockey rinks were filled with renewed pride and patriotism. Obama's approval rating shot up 11 points.
I think that he did a great job. He's the one who finally stepped up to the plate and got it done.
But it took almost 10 years, and nobody's saying the world is any safer.
Despite recent successes, our fight against terrorist threats is far from over.
So what, then, is everyone so happy about? Mona Eltahawy is an accomplished journalist and award-winning columnist based in New York. She's also been a frequent contributor to Connect. As a Muslim and an American, she too went to Ground Zero after hearing news of bin Laden's death. She joins me tonight from Washington. Nice to have you aboard. We saw so many Americans out on the streets Sunday night and even after that, celebrating, reacting pretty strongly about what they saw. What did you do when you found out that bin Laden was dead?
Well, first of all, I was relieved because bin Laden hijacked my religion. I'm a proud Muslim, and bin Laden hijacked the religion and completely disfigured it to the extent that he made the lives of so many of us hell. Osama bin Laden and George Bush, between the two of them, made the lives of Muslims in many countries hell. So when I heard that bin Laden was dead, I was relieved. And I went to Ground Zero because I wanted to pay respects to the thousands of victims who died on 9/11, but also to pay respects to those victims of the war on terror across the world. So I went there hoping for a candlelight vigil, and instead I found this kind of frat boy party that was a parody of Team America, a film made to parody that kind of American nationalism gone wild, made by the South Park creators. So I was really dismayed.
How do you explain that reaction? Because certainly I think Canada has looked on with some incredulity to this outpouring of, as you said, sort of madcap joy.
Mm-hmm. As I said, I'm relieved that bin Laden is dead. Mm-hmm. And there's a big difference between being relieved and celebrating, and not just celebrating, but where was this celebrating happening? It was happening in a place where thousands of people died, where last year Muslims were told, don't build an Islamic community center 2 blocks away because this is hallowed ground. And there on this hallowed ground, you had this frat boy party. So, I would imagine that many of the people who were there were quite young when 9/11 happened, and they've grown up with this idea that, bin Laden equals Islam equals Muslims. So this pressure kind of exploded. But, I like to think America is better than this. I became an American citizen just 2 days before that happened. And I'm looking to the better parts of America to remind us that this is not the way that we should mark an occasion where we should remember the victims and not have a frat boy party.
How do you think America should be reacting? It's still a great power. Still many people in the world look to it and again, are probably looking at some of these celebrations with a little bit of distaste.
Absolutely. I think America, first of all, should react with dignity and should remember the victims. I hope when President Obama goes to Ground Zero tomorrow and meets with families of the victims and the first responders, a solemn ceremony is held in their memory. Victims of 9/11 were Muslim and non-Muslim. I said a prayer and then I left because I couldn't take the atmosphere in the early hours of Monday anymore. I think America as well, because it is such a huge country, should also remember the concept of justice. There are a lot of questions being asked about the actual raid itself and the justice behind an abhorrent as a man as he was, the justice behind shooting in the face an unarmed man, these are all questions that must eventually lead us to the war on terror, to Guantanamo, and to a host of other things that were done or committed in the name of protecting America. America now, including myself as an American, as an Egyptian American, as a Muslim American, must sit down and say, what is justice? And we must rise above the kind of things that happened over the past few years and pursue justice, not pursue the kind of bandit justice that I believe the Bush administration put us on.
And one last thing, how have American Muslims reacted to the reaction, if you will? Is it similar to you? Do people share your consternation at what's going on?
Right. Well, a host of North American Muslim groups, and I was just reading through statements, all said they were relieved that bin Laden died. But again, there's a difference between being relieved and going out and singing ole, 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 as I saw at Ground Zero. So I think while the majority of Muslims I know are relieved that this man who distorted our religion is gone, I think people also, many Muslims I know, many non-Muslims I know, I think just as human beings, many people I know are dismayed at this kind of reaction and want something much more solemn to honor those who were killed, both here and in other countries across the world during the war on terror.
Very good to talk to you tonight. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Tom.